So, I watched the Cloverfield Paradox. Okay, so here's the thing. I was expecting this to be terrible based on, reviews and what everybody was saying, which was that it sucked. But I I I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, it's not good. Like seriously, like on Metacritic, it's like I think it has like a 37 on Metacritic right now, and like 50 Shades Freed has like a 32 or like a 33 or something, and I'm like, is it is it really only 4 points better than 50 Shades Freed? I mean, I know that's not like an exact science, the rating system, but still. But I watched it and it's not good, but it's not that bad. So like this is the third installment in the Cloverfield franchise, and it is easily the worst. It's worse than the first one. It's certainly worse than 10 Cloverfield Lane, like by a country mile. Because I really, really like 10 Cloverfield Lane. And I even I like the original Cloverfield. But this one, yeah. So the Cloverfield Paradox, like 10 Cloverfield Lane, it was not developed with the intent of it being part of the Cloverfield franchise. That came later when J.J. Abrams came along and was like, I think I can figure out a way to shoehorn this into my Cloverfield thing. And so he did that, and so the movie was rewritten to accommodate that, and you can very clearly see like the scissor marks where the copy and the pasting. It's very, very evident because the movie, for the most part, there's nothing to really tie it in to the Cloverfield verse, the Cloververse, as it were. So it's basically just like your standard, people trapped on a spacefaring vessel, and then shit goes down. That's it. It's like your Alien, your Event Horizon, especially Event Horizon, Life most recently. There's several others, but it does nothing new with the formula, like at all. It's just people, they behave stupid. They're supposed to be scientists, but they behave stupid, as the plot necessitates them to behave stupidly. They behave stupid. They don't trust each other. It's like, surely you guys should be like a tight-knit crew, and they just their bonds are so easily broken. They all act like idiots. A lot of the time they don't act like human beings. The worm scene, especially when one of them, so they hop into another dimension, and then because they hop into another dimension, the Russian guy, the worms from that dimension went inside him. Okay, and so he eventually we have our chest burster scene, this movie's version of Alien's chest burster scene with the worms, and it's really fucking gross, but it's just stupid, because it's just it's you so easily see what the movie owes to Alien, and it's well, obviously it's we gotta have a chest, a gross out scene, whatever, but there's no horror really. It's just kind of ew, and it happens pretty quickly. There's some parts, there's a little build up, but it's not, the actual scene itself is not that, it's not that terrifying. It's not nearly as terrifying as the Alien scene, because, well, because the filmmakers just aren't as talented, and it's just not as good. But I mean, a lot of it has to do with just the acting, because it's they don't react with horror. They're all just sort of oh shit, no. And then when it happens, then he explodes from fucking worms, being inside him. The Irish guy, because there's an Irish guy, by the way, he's oh, well, we know where the worms went. And so he cracks a joke after they've just seen one of their crewmates explode from interdimensional worm bursting out of him. And he's oh, well, we know where the worms went. but and it's like, dude, you just watched your crewmate. Like, I know you guys didn't like him that much because he's, Russian, but still, like, shouldn't you be like they get doused with worms from him, and I'm like, shouldn't you be like a little traumatized? And they're all just like, they just fully don't care. Really, the only good performance, the best performance, is Gugu Mbatha-Raw's. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Oh yeah, and then the arm scene. One guy, he gets his arm cut off, I guess, dismembered, but it's like interdimensional dismemberment, so it's like his arm's like fine and he feels fine, he just doesn't have an arm anymore. And they have his arm and it's like it moves around, it's like autonomous now, and they're all just sort of like, it's it's like treated as a joke, and it's like there's like no, and it's like that's fine, I guess, to treat it as a joke because it's a little silly, but it's like they just act with no horror. They're just sort of, he acts like a little horror, but not that much. And it's weird because it's like the cast is it's a good cast. Like there's a lot of talent there. There's David Oyelowo, there's Zi Zhang, there's Gugu Mbatha-Raw, as I've already said. Like it's a good cast. They just don't care, I guess. And I mean, I guess I can't blame them because the movie sucks. I feel like maybe they found out that it was like going to be a Cloverfield movie, and then they were just like, ugh. And then they stopped caring. The Cloverfield bits, like the parts that make it explicitly a Cloverfield movie, they're the worst. And how they accomplish it is basically, the main character, her husband is back on Earth, and we see his plight just like throughout the movie, and it is so mind-numbingly dull. And like nothing really like he finds this girl who's like the surrogate daughter to him. He looks after her. It's so boring. Like I tuned out during the entirety of those sections because they just added nothing. Except for, hey, this is a Cloverfield movie because we see like allusions and hints to like what's going on Earth, and we see silhouettes of things, and he's just his plot is just so boring. It's just him with a girl, and it's like it's supposed to be important, his character, because he and his wife, like, whatever. I'm not getting into it. It's not good. The ending, which makes it it's a Cloverfield movie, because there's Clover, there she is, there's the monster, and it's just tacked on. It's just so obviously, again, you see the scissor marks, you see where they're like, oh well, we already have this movie that was not a Cloverfield movie, but we're gonna make it a Cloverfield movie because J.J. Abrams is gonna do it, so now it's a Cloverfield movie, and it's just not seamless. It doesn't really work, and it's just not good. Like, because at least 10 Cloverfield Lane, like, I don't think, because 10 Cloverfield Lane had the exact same thing. Like, it was not a Cloverfield movie, and then they turned it into one, and it's it's all the same thing. It's just sort of tacked on at the end for the most part. But the thing is, 10 Cloverfield Lane was just a way more competent movie already. Like, it was just a tight, good psychological thriller. Like, it just had a way better foundation to begin with. And then the Cloverfield elements that were added in, they didn't detract from any of that because it was just already such a good movie. And even then, they just didn't, they weren't so, it wasn't boring, at least. Like, the Cloverfield part, which is mostly at the end of Cloverfield Lane, like, I mean, I had fun. I had fun with it. It didn't, it didn't detract from it. In this movie, they detract from it because we're constantly going back to husband's plight that we do not care about at all. There are some good things. Again, Gugu Mbatha-Raw's performance is really good. She's easily the best of the cast. Like, she's pretty compelling on screen. I like how Zi Zhang's character never speaks English throughout the whole, like, she constantly is speaking Chinese, and everybody else is speaking English, but they're apparently like mutually intelligible, because she'll like speak Chinese to them and they'll speak English back to her, and then she'll like respond in Chinese, but it's like they're responding to each other, so they can obviously understand each other, but they're just never speaking the same language. So obviously they understand Chinese, and obviously she understands English, but they just choose to not speak in each other's language. I liked that. I didn't get it. I thought it was weird, but I kind of thought it was funny. Yeah, this movie sucked. The Ritual. I don't. Just sort of people stumbling in places where they shouldn't, and then shit happens. Shit goes down because shit has to go down because that's what we came here for. The worst thing about this movie is that it's not scary. Like I was at no point scared during this movie. And that's the biggest crime that I think a horror movie can make, probably. And like, unless it's compensating in some other way. Like, I don't know that The Babadook is totally the most terrifying movie I've ever seen, but there's a lot of there's a lot of craftsmanship. There's a lot of good acting. The story is interesting. Like, it's not a story we've seen before in a horror movie. So even if it's not the most terrifying movie, again, I think it's propped up by other elements. Ditto with like It Follows. I don't think It Follows is the most terrifying movie by far. But again, the other elements are strong, so it's forgivable that I'm not like screaming the entire time. There is like some real craftsmanship in it, and that's what makes it most frustrating. Is that it's like you can see that like the director is talented, and there's like a lot of great like sound design and like the atmosphere. Cinematography is really good. Like it's like he knows how to build atmosphere, but he does not know what to do with it. Like again, there are some scenes that are like, oh, this is kind of tense, but it's just there's no payoff at all. Like the whole movie is just like waiting and waiting, for something to like grip you, and none of it does. The characters suck. And like it's a horror movie, so usually characters suck. Thomas from Downton Abbey is in it. His face is still carved by angels. That was nice. I like that. There's this whole like what sets up the movie is one of their friends, one of the main group he's killed in a robbery, and the main character, he's like got this like huge like survivor's guilt, and he feels bad, and he's like, what could I have done? And they like his friends kind of blame him for it. And you think this is gonna like sort of tie into the horror elements in some way, like is he crazy all along? What's going on? And it doesn't go anywhere. Yet they keep throughout the whole movie. I mean, first of all, it's the whole setup of the movie. That's why they're on this trip, is like to honor him. But then like it keeps going back to it, like in the imagery and stuff of like them. He's like constantly hallucinates being back in the liquor store with the robbery, blah, whatever. And that is like throughout the whole movie, and yet nothing is done with it. Like it does nothing with it thematically. It's just like, well, why? What's the like? It could have been anything that brought them to the forest. Like it could have been anything. Like why did it have to be? Their friend dies and they're doing it. And like why even go there if you're not going to do anything with it? Why not just make it, hey, we're on vacation and we wanted to hike in Sweden, and we're just going to hike in Sweden because we wanted to, because we like to, why can't just make them, hiking enthusiasts, and they're like, let's go to Sweden because they have a kick-ass trail. Like there's no reason that it has to be the whole, like emotional baggage involved, because it does nothing. All the characters are unlikable. They're all dicks. There's the bespectacled, whiny, fat one who's like the load of the group, because there's always that one, the load. And he like gets his knee, injured, and so he slows them down. And he's the whole reason they have to go. They're like, hey, let's take a shortcut through these creepy woods. And they're like, that's a great idea. Because, they've never seen a horror movie before. And again, like that would all be fine. Like if it's like the characters suck and it's a stupid plot, that would all be fine if it was scary. But it's not scary. At one point, I even like forgot that I was watching a movie because I only had 15 minutes left, and I was like, this is really boring. And so I just stopped and like I went to do other things, and like a half hour went by, and then I was like, oh yeah, I didn't finish this movie. And so I went back and finished it, and yeah, it ended, and I was like, okay, that's that's it. Yeah, it wasn't good. Anyway, yeah, these Netflix original movies, I feel like Netflix has not nailed the formula of how to make a successful movie. Or at least, for the most part, because a lot of them are shit. Um, and I don't know, I feel like they need to make some changes because I don't know, I don't know, I don't think there's enough quality control, especially if like following Bright. So with Bright and then the Cloverfield paradox and now the Ritual, it's just sort of I don't know. We need to maybe there needs to be some quality control in there. We need to figure some stuff out. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say.